Joining me now is retired RCMP Officer Sherry Benson-Podolchuk. Sherry, it's a devastating situation, that we've learned about in BC. Given your experience and everything that you have been through, take us through your first reaction to learning about one of the worst mass shootings in this country's history.
Oh, thanks for having me, Matt. It's a tragedy beyond words. And as a mom, I can't imagine. You send your kids to school thinking they're coming home on the bus fine. That Tumbler Ridge is a community about the same size as Gimli. And to have something like that, you know everybody knows everybody else's business. And it will have the ripple effect through the entire community. That sense of safety is gone. And the long-term trauma, the PTSD, the mental health issues can be lifelong for many of these students, the families. And like one of the speakers had said, the first responders, because going to that kind of scene is not something we do every day. And it's like I said, it's a tragedy beyond words. And I think the deep dive into social media will shed some light onto what happened. We may never really know the motive. We may never know that, and that won't help the families in the recovery, whether they know why she did it or not. And for me, I think it's important that we acknowledge the long-term trauma that these people are going to have, and the first responders, and be patient with the police, because they can't release things because it might affect and have tremendous negative impact on the investigation, because we don't know. There might be somebody out there when they do a digital dive who knew something and didn't say anything. And this is why social media, we have to be careful when people start posting things. And I noticed myself on TikTok, people were posting things that we just don't get ahead of the police investigation, and try to be patient as they unravel this horrific incident.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for people because, in this day and age, everybody wants this information quickly and the speculation. But, there are certainly, online on social media, we're identifying the shooter incorrectly, at least at one point from what we have seen. So, when you're in this investigation, though, Sherry, you mentioned it too, that Tumbler Ridge, not unlike the size of Gimli, Manitoba, where you are, and for these first responders. But just talk about the fact that, at least to our understanding, that they got there within 2 minutes of that first 911 call and were able to likely save lives as a result of being there so quickly.
That's fantastic, because you're right. It was a small community. The police were there within 2 minutes, and they inevitably saved lives, which is fantastic. And my issue would be, where did she get the weapon, and what kind of weapon did she have to be able to do all that within such a short period of time? And I know in the rural communities, a lot of people have weapons. I'm not sure if they've mentioned anything, but that will come out in the investigation. But yeah, the fact that the police responded very quickly, but let's face it, they don't have a SWAT team in a small town, and they have to do the best they can with what they have. And when you don't know how many shooters are there, you don't know where they are, you don't know if it's a student or not. So you're going in there kind of blind, and maybe not with as much resources as you would like as a police officer, because your first response is to protect everybody, and then protect yourself and your partner, and maintain some sort of sense of safety so that other people aren't injured who might be coming in on the scene. And you don't know who the shooter might be, which is very, very confusing.
And we talked last hour too, Sherry, in a small community, these officers, these first responders likely knew or had, you mentioned it as a mom, kids in the school, or, it's a small community where everybody knows everybody. So there are relationships, I'm sure, that are there to people that are inside the school, whether it's staff, students, or otherwise.
Well, you don't even know if some of the police officers and first responders, the ambulance people who came, were thinking, oh my God, my son, my daughter's there. Am I going to be picking up their body? And that's where the PTS and the trauma can have lifelong impact on everybody, because you do know everybody. Oh, she bagged my groceries and he delivered my flowers and things like that. And now they're gone. And for the longest time, people will be going to bed and waking up, and for a split second, they'll think, my son, my daughter's still here. And then that second after that, they'll realize they've been murdered and taken away, and the grief will start all over again.
You mentioned it earlier too, but I'm just curious to in your experience the next step. So it's going to be looking at the gun and the firearm that was involved as well. Clearly looking into the background of the shooter. But how does this investigation proceed? Because it's also multiple crime scenes. You have the school, but we have the home. At least that's all we know at this point.
Wherever you find a body or a victim, that's a crime scene. And that, again, it's a small community, but they won't have 2 or 3 forensic teams. The RCMP will have to bring in resources to help process those scenes. And it's not like in TV, you can do it in an hour. It can take days. And the digital dive can take days or months, and no matter how far back. It's those kind of things where the police need patience, and they will release things as they can to protect the community, of course, but also to maintain transparency and keep the investigation on par and make sure they don't release anything that could cause damage or trauma to anybody. In other words, they don't want to send out a name of someone who was murdered when in fact, no, they're not. Do you know what I mean? That could be just as devastating. Finding out that your son was named on social media, somebody posted on Facebook, and you find out no, they're not, or yes, they are. So they have to be very, very careful in the kind of information that they slowly release as this unfolds. And like I said, it's a terrible, traumatic event for the community and for Canada, because this doesn't happen. We've had shootings since 1975, but this is the worst one we've ever had.
Yeah, again, the third worst mass shooting in Canadian history. Polytechnique, the worst, especially school-involved shooting. We had the shooting in Nova Scotia a number of years ago, but this right now, unfortunately and tragically, is number 3 on that list.
Sherry Benson, are students. These are young people whose lives have been taken away, and their goals, their dreams are gone, and the families and friends really need lots of mental health support.
Yeah, forever changed, clearly. Sherry Benson-Podolchuk, retired RCMP officer. Really appreciate your time and your insight today, Sherry. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
We just mentioned too, and I should note that we do, at least at this point, we understand that RCMP in BC are expected to provide an update on yesterday's mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge. That update's going to be coming out of Surrey, BC at some point here today. We're expecting 2 p.m. Eastern is what I'm just told. So in just over 45 minutes from now, when we do have that news conference, when we do hear from the RCMP in British Columbia, we will certainly bring you that live right here on CTV News Channel. For the latest on this story, and again, if you want to stream, if you can't be watching right now, if you want to stream that online too, that will be available on our website, ctvnews.ca. You can also watch it on the CTV News app.